It's been 2 months since many parts of Ottawa saw extensive damage from a rare derecho storm, which ripped through the capital, knocking down tens of thousands of trees and leaving over half the city in darkness for days. With climate change becoming an even realer threat, there are now calls to change rules so the disruption people face becomes more minimal. Storms which used to happen once in a century are now happening every decade, and the power of the wind is intensifying. During the May long weekend storm, those who lived in high-rise buildings suffered the worst, with no power for days, over a week in some cases. That meant those with mobility issues were confined to their apartments, unable to take the stairs, with elevators not working. Now Mayor Jim Watson says the city is looking at options to make generators in some settings mandatory.
And with respect to the elevators, we saw too many examples of people who were, seniors in particular, who were in high rises, 12, 13, 14 stories high, that just could not come down to go grocery shopping, let alone go back up the stairs. So the very minimum, there should be some capacity for one of the elevators to operate during an emergency. And unfortunately, we will, I'm sure, see many other significant weather events as a result of climate change over the course of our lifetime, and we have to be better prepared.
Here in these Minto Run buildings, they've been without power for over a week now, but to make matters worse, they also don't have running water. Ottawa fire crews were here yesterday to try to help the residents out. This was the scene at some Minto Run buildings in Parkwood Hills days after the storm hit. That part of the city saw extensive damage to their power grid and were left without electricity for over 8 days. Then the water went out, making matters worse. One resident told us the elevator shaft flooded in her building and damage would take a long time to fix. Community groups checked in on residents when they could, and places like the Ottawa Mission and NROC provided food to tenants. Ottawa fire crews pumped water into units through hose so some people could flush their toilets. But Watson says it's not only apartments which need to be looked at. He wants to see generators mandated for other settings like gas stations and essential stores like pharmacies and food providers.
We saw the challenges with getting something as basic as gasoline, where we had some gas stations had lots of gas but no power, and others that had lots of power but no gas. And so I think it's reasonable for us to go and work with the province to determine how we get gas stations that are a necessity in our day-to-day life, whether it's for emergency vehicles or getting to work, to make sure that they have some capacity to get that gas into people's cars.
Hydro Ottawa says damage to their electrical grid was worse than anything they've ever seen before. Surprises kept popping up along the lines, meaning they couldn't provide estimates as to when power would be fully restored. Damage was worse than what was seen during the ice storm of 1998 or the tornadoes which ripped through the city back in 2018. Crews had to be brought in from surrounding areas to restore the power, with the storm causing anywhere from $25 to $30 million in damages. Watson thinks all teams did a phenomenal job responding to the devastation, but wants to review what could be done to be better prepared for future storms.
I think we have to take a top-to-bottom review, our own practices, before we start going out and telling other people in the private sector what to do. But I think as a bare minimum, and I would even add on to Keith's motion, grocery stores, some capacity for grocery stores to have product, have some capacity for their freezers. I suspect most of them do, but I know that a number of smaller stores were throwing a lot of product out because they just didn't have electricity for over 2 days. And that's the spoil date, really, when you think of it.
Watson says the city is working with the province of Ontario to see what legal rights they might have to make generators mandatory in certain settings. Meanwhile, Hydro Ottawa says they are prepared for any future outages which might occur, including for if another storm is to hit the capital. Charlie Santuan News, Ottawa.